Summer is here. Do you know how much water your landscape needs? You might be surprised because less is more. Mandatory summer watering restrictions are in effect May through August, and that means no watering from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and never on Sundays. Slowly increase watering your grass from 3 to 4 days a week and only add more days if you need it. For drip irrigated plants and trees, 4 days a week is plenty. Find water-saving tips at snwa.com. SNWA is a not-for-profit water agency.
We just celebrated the emergence of Mojave Max from his burrow, the latest ever emergence on record, but not everyone is celebrating because, according to conservation biologist Patrick Donnelly, Great Basin Director at the Center for Biological Diversity, Mojave Max is actually an icon of problematic greenwashing. Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we start an epic beef with Las Vegas's favorite tortoise. It's Wednesday, May 21st. I'm Dayvid Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. All right, before we get started, Patrick, I'm going to do a trigger warning for any school kid with tortoise stickers on their lunchbox. This is going to get a little deep, kiddos. All right, let's jump right into the headline from this conversation. Why does Patrick Donnelly hate the beloved Southern Nevada mascot, Mojave Max? And let's take the guardrails off, man. Let it all out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to start by saying that I am emphatically in love with desert tortoises.
Yes, okay.
Been working on desert tortoises my whole career, and, they are the icon of our beloved Mojave Desert.
Excellent clarification. Yes, We all love tortoises, hopefully, in general, but there's one guy in particular.
And Mojave Max has served a useful role as far as educating people that we have tortoises. And if it was just kind of a feel-goody little program for kids, it would be fine. However, we need to look at who pays for Mojave Max. Where does the funding for Mojave Max come from? And the answer to that is real estate developers, and in particular, real estate developers who destroyed Mojave Max's habitat.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where did the concept of Mojave, because Mojave Max isn't just one little dude that's out there kind of fending for himself. I mean, it's sort of a whole campaign. So when did this whole fiction of Mojave Max start?
Well, we've got to go way back to when Las Vegas was a tiny fraction of the size it is now in 1990, when the desert tortoise was protected under the Endangered Species Act. Its populations were falling across its range, and it was seen to need those protections in order to avoid extinction. Well, the Las Vegas Valley is prime desert tortoise habitat, or it was. It was full of desert tortoises, and it was kind of the epicenter of their distribution in southern Nevada, or one of them. And so every time you built a house in the Las Vegas Valley, you were destroying desert tortoise habitat. Theoretically, once the tortoise became protected under the Endangered Species Act, then you couldn't build a house, you couldn't destroy that habitat without a permit.
You couldn't build a single house, is what, as I understood, what it was initially designed to do.
Not without a permit. Now, people think, the Endangered Species Act means you can't do anything, and it's like that's actually not true. You can do a lot of things. You just need a permit to do it.
Got it.
And the premise of the permit is if you're going to destroy tortoise habitat, in order to get your permit, you need to compensate the tortoise for that harm. It's called mitigation. And so if you agree to do X, Y, or Z mitigation, then the Fish and Wildlife Service says, okay, we'll give you a permit to build your house and destroy tortoise habitat because you're doing these other beneficial things for the tortoise. Mm-hmm. And so that was the premise. However, it wouldn't make sense for the thousands and thousands of homes across the Las Vegas Valley as they're being built to get their own permit. Everybody gets their own permit. That would be chaos, and the administrative backlog would be enormous, and it wouldn't make sense. So Clark County went to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in the mid-90s and said, we want to get a blanket permit for the whole Las Vegas Valley to do construction and so forth here. And how do we lump all those permits into one big permit and then agree to extensive compensation, the mitigation we call it, to compensate for the harms of all that development. And so
Okay.
they developed what is known as the Multi-Species Habitat Conservation Plan. Oh my God, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, and
Uh,
there's no good acronym for that one.
no, it's the MSHCP. It's a terrible acronym.
Yeah, mishpup.
We call it the plan. The plan basically said Las Vegas can develop functionally the entire Las Vegas Valley in exchange for large scale mitigation measures. And so one of the mitigation measures was get rid of all cows in desert tortoise habitat in southern Nevada. And so that's why when you go out across most of southern Nevada recreating, you don't see cows, whereas on most BLM land elsewhere, you do.
That
Um,
is a great point.
yeah,
I'm as someone who grew up here and who would drive out of town, which takes a lot longer to get out of town than it used to because town just keeps growing. You would see cows and well, honestly, a lot of tortoises around too. But I had no idea that's why the cows disappeared. Cows got evicted. Sorry,
cows got
cows.
evicted. That
All
was
right.
one of the mitigation measures. Yep. Other mitigation measures include the Bureau of Land Management instituting route designation measures. So, in other words, restricting off highway vehicles to specific roads as opposed to just letting them drive wherever they want.
Mhm.
That was a measure to protect the tortoise. And so, there were a whole suite of these measures. Not all of them are free. And so, there was a cost associated with the plan. And that cost worked out to $550 an acre. So if you're going to build a house in the Las Vegas Valley, you need to pay a fee of $550 an acre, a mitigation fee.
Okay,
And
that
this,
doesn't seem like a whole lot.
well, it's not. Now those are $2,000, right? And it's 2025 now, so it should be considerably more by now. So that generates this pot of money. And the pot of money goes to a variety of things, including tortoise research, including tortoise fencing to keep them off of highways, all sorts of stuff. But one of the things that money goes to is a public education campaign. And thus began the life of Mojave Max,
We
uh,
got there.
the
Okay.
public education campaign of Clark County's plan for development.
So he became both cartoon and real tortoise, kind of in one fell swoop. So he was the mascot, the campaign head, but also they picked a tortoise to bestow the honor of Mojave Max, kind of force that name on him. Is that kind of where we start?
Yeah, there is a Mojave Max, the tortoise himself, who I have no particular objection to Mr. Max.
Right, or herself. We
Or
actually have
herself.
heard
Oh,
from, yeah,
is it a
sometimes.
female?
Yeah, well, it's not the same guy since the beginning.
Oh,
Sadly,
uh,
not every Mojave Max lives to be past 100 years old.
it's like Santa
Some
Claus.
Yeah, sometimes it's a her.
All right,
Yeah,
all
sorry,
right.
y'all. Sorry, I don't. We're gonna stir up a big pot here, but it's just biology.
Yeah. So I mean, Mojave Max, the public education campaign to educate people about tortoises is all well and good. And if it was a very tiny percentage of the mitigation fee, we wouldn't be having this discussion. But
Okay.
they actually spend millions of dollars on Mojave Max. And that is money that was meant to directly offset the harm of development on the desert tortoise. And so we have to ask ourselves, does a cartoon tortoise prancing around in a costume at various events, like, is that offsetting the harm to the species? Is that preventing the species from going extinct?
But I'm going to push back a little bit here, Patrick, because Mojave Max, the concept, has taught tens of thousands, if not more, of Southern Nevada students about the beauty and fragility of our desert, and it's also been a way to kind of inculcate a sense of identity and pride in the desert, and respect and love for tortoises. So, is that not money well spent?
Well, if that was the end of it, maybe we could have that discussion, but it's not. They have this advertising campaign called Build to the Max. And there's a billboard, you've probably seen them around town, a billboard with a guy in a hard hat and they're building a house. And it says,
Mm.
Mojave Max says, build to the max, implying that, hey, building all these houses on top of Mojave Max's habitat is fine. No big deal. We're conserving Mojave Max. We can build to the max. There's another billboard you may have seen around town with a dirt bike shredding through the desert, and it says shred to the max. Like, hey, we can just go on shredding our dirt bikes around the desert and it's not going to drive Mojave Max extinct. Whereas actually it's the opposite. Like habitat loss and off-highway vehicles are two of the leading contributors to the desert tortoise's decline. And so
Yeah.
what messages are we giving off here? Are we saying Las Vegas is sustainable and environmentally responsible in the way it's grown and is building?
Patrick, I think, your points are well made as far as, the language and the messaging that comes through. But I think that the Clark County Desert Conservation Program, or the DCP, who are in charge of this program, would say, well, no, it built to the max just means we're highlighting the importance of enjoying the desert while protecting the delicate ecosystem. Are they fooling themselves when they say stuff like that?
It's just, is that preventing the tortoise from going extinct? The point is to stop the tortoise's slide to extinction that is being caused by the very development that the DCP is supposed to be offsetting.
Well, is it going extinct?
Yes, the desert tortoise, in a 2019 survey paper of the most recent data and everything, the statement from the authors were, if present trends continue, the desert tortoise is on a trajectory to extinction.
What are their numbers right now, if you know? What's the decline rate?
Range-wide numbers are not totally known. It's between 50 and 100,000 of them, but that's across a huge area. Their population was known to decline by 50% between 2004 and 2014.
Oh, wow.
And so we don't have the next 10 years yet. They're still crunching that data. But you got to remember, the population was already so low in 1990 that they said we need to protect this creature under the Endangered Species Act. 20 years later, the population had fallen by another 50% just in that 10-year window. And so it's catastrophic. It's truly catastrophic for the desert tortoise.
Beer, Barter, and Mall is a new concept where you can shop for antiques and art while you drink beer and wine. You can buy, sell, or barter your goods, services, and treasures. I actually got to stop in and check out this place before it even opened. It was so cool. It was like craft beer bar meets antique mall. I saw this amazing vintage pendulum lamp I wanted, and this other girl bought this like brass tortoise cigarette holder. It was so cute. The space is nearly 10,000 square feet, and there's over 30 vendors in there, including antique vendors and local artists. Barter Mall was created because the rent in the Arts District is so expensive right now, and it's forced the antique malls and the art dealers out of the area. So our culture and community, it's just so important to downtown Las Vegas, so Barter is trying to do their part to make sure it's a place where artists will be able to continue to thrive. They're open 5 days a week right now, but by the end of the summer, they're going to be open 7 days a week. So check out barterlv.com to learn more, or hey, just stop on by, grab a beer, and do a little bit of shopping.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
So what specifically is the issue with building homes and desert tortoise habitats? I mean, is there just nothing that one can do without destroying the other?
Tortoises cannot coexist with development. Their numbers and occupancy levels go down kind of linearly in relation to the distance from development. So if you're within 1 kilometer of the built environment, there are no tortoises. If you're within 5 kilometers, there's a lower density. And so they're really not compatible uses together. The Las Vegas Valley to the desert tortoise is a lost cause at this point, right? Like the Las Vegas Valley doesn't really function as a tortoise habitat anymore because it's full of houses. I think where we see this really coming into clearest focus is with the Clark County Lands Bill proposal, the proposal to sell off public land between southern Las Vegas and Prim and build a huge city down there. You know, that is an area that is undeveloped right now that is full of desert tortoises. And is not lost to the tortoise the way the Las Vegas Valley is. And that same desert conservation program, that same Department of Environmental Sustainability are the ones pushing the Clark County lands bill.
Yeah. Now, on that lands bill, it has divided some conservationists. I'll note that. And the ones who have sort of hopped on board with the Clark County lands bill, which again, for people who are listening to this podcast, we've talked about it quite a bit, but this is a proposal primarily from our Senator Catherine Cortez Masto to carve out undeveloped federal lands, and the proceeds would go back into the community. And it is touted as a product of some degree of compromise and harm reduction when it comes to things like endangered species. I mean, Patrick, let me just ask you straight up. I mean, from your perspective, is there ever room for compromise and harm reduction measures when, the land is deemed to be needed for human habitation?
Who deems it? Does Howard Hughes Incorporated deem it necessary for human habitation? Because that's who the public records requests that I've done show is the ones who want it for human habitation. If the talk is affordable housing, this is not about affordable housing. There will be no affordable housing in the open desert 30 miles south of the Strip. This is so that mega developers can plop down another Summerlin in the middle of the desert and make huge amounts of money while people live in McMansions in the middle of nowhere.
Well, let me phrase it a different way, and I get your perspective very much so. But those conservationists, those environmentalists who have kind of signed off said, well, if this is happening anyway, isn't it better for us to get some degrees of compromise, some areas protected, some monies devoted to the things that are more important to us? Is there ever room for that type of talk from your perspective?
Well, two answers to that. Number one, if it's going to happen anyway. Well, if we all agree it's going to happen anyway, then it will. If we all decide it's not going to happen anyway and we're going to fight it, then it very well may not happen anyway. And so I think that...
Point one.
Point one. Point two, the Clark County Lands Bill does nothing to compensate the desert tortoise for the harms it is incurring. All that wilderness protection, all that so-called conservation they got, most of it is in areas that are already protected. Like they're designating wilderness in Lake Mead National Recreation Area, which is a national park functionally, and in Desert National Wildlife Refuge, which is already a wildlife refuge. And much of the land that's being protected is rocky mountains, rocky summits, that are very beautiful and charismatic in photographs. But, it turns out what the desert tortoise needs is the most flat, boring creosote desert you can find. The flatter, the more boring, the better. That's where the desert tortoise lives. And those are the places we tend not to protect in these pieces of legislation, because those are the places the developers want to put their subdivisions.
What do you think about tortoise relocation efforts, getting them away from those areas where there's construction into these more bucolic tortoise areas that you just described?
I love thinking about a bucolic tortoise habitat. They're kind of prancing around in flowers and grass and,
Flatlands and creosote, baby.
Yeah, right. The science is really clear that translocation is not effective at saving the species. Can you save an individual tortoise from dying with translocation? Yeah, you can for some period of time. Can you save the species? Are you perpetuating the species? The answer is no. So for instance, there's genetic testing that showed that 0% of translocated male tortoises reproduce. So everywhere in tortoise habitat is someone's territory, some tortoise's territory. And if you're a male tortoise that's being translocated somewhere else, you're being translocated into someone's territory. And they're not going to like that. And they're going to fight you off. And they're the ones who are going to be reproducing with the females. And so if you're saying all translocated males fail to reproduce, then you're basically cutting off 50% of the genetic variability of the species moving forward.
It's like you're transporting a bunch of engineering students into a cowboy bar and saying, good luck.
Yeah. Well, and so that affects reproduction, but it also just affects survival. When you're translocated
on both examples, not to
be
too funny about it, but yeah.
Well, because tortoises spend the vast majority of their lives in burrows, like over 90% of their life is spent in a burrow, and that's how they survive the heat in the summer. And so if you get translocated somewhere and you don't know where the burrows are, you may just die from exposure. the tortoise may die from exposure. And indeed, at the Yellow Pine Solar Project over in Pahrump Valley, they translocated 150 tortoises, and something like 35 or 40 of them got eaten by badgers because they were just wandering around. They couldn't find a burrow to take shelter in.
I just got to say it. Badgers. We don't need no stinking badgers. All right. Well, I think I have to ask this question just because people might be wondering, but why so devoted to the desert tortoise? Why is the desert tortoise so important to you and your group?
The desert tortoise is a keystone species of the Mojave Desert ecosystem. In places that have solid, intact tortoise populations, we can be fairly sure that the desert is healthy, that the plant community is healthy, that the habitat is mostly intact. Conversely, if we have places where tortoise populations are crashing or where its habitat is getting completely converted to subdivisions, then we can be pretty sure that that desert is also degraded. That desert is also unhealthy and potentially dying. And so, we're not just fighting for the Mojave Desert tortoise, we're fighting for the Mojave Desert. And to me, why do I care so much? Like, the Mojave Desert is my whole life. I mean, I came here 21 years ago. I fell in love and I've never left. And it's the most important thing in the world to me. So it's not just the desert we're fighting for, it's our very lives.
I don't think you would take this job, but let's say you were given the task of reimagining Mojave Max with whatever budget you felt was appropriate from those funds. How would you recreate Mojave Max for the community? Let's say you had to recreate Mojave Max. You didn't have the option of scrapping them. You're not Doge, but you do have to do something with them. What do you do with Mojave Max?
That's a great question. I think Mojave Max could tell us a story, not just of there's a tortoise and it's a little cartoon character, but like, this is an organism that has survived a lot, and some of our actions today are actually negatively impacting Mojave Max. And Max could tell that story. And Max could say, hey, if you want to conserve the tortoise while providing for a good quality of life, build up, not out. Let's build multi-family, multi-story housing. Let's emphasize public transit. Let's talk about new urbanism. The desert tortoise should be the icon of new urbanism because he's telling us, if you can do this, you can save me.
Wow. So Mojave Max is out there saying, hey, I know that you guys are doing these surveys on affordable housing. Let me lay down the truth. A, you're looking at single family homes. B, you don't have the infrastructure. C, you're killing me and my kin. D, I will fight you. Is your Mojave Max equipped in maybe some ninja gear? There is that sort of out there, right? Recruit the ninja
I want
turtles.
my Mojave Max equipped with a bullhorn.
All right, a kinder, gentler, but more direct protesting tortoise. I love it.
Yeah, indeed.
Look, I don't think that Mojave Max is going to go anywhere, but short of boycotting him, how can people make a difference in their everyday lives when it comes to tortoises and other Mojave Desert fauna?
I think the number one thing for people in Las Vegas right now is the Clark County Lands Bill. It's really existential. Like, they're proposing to put a whole new city the size of St. Louis south of Las Vegas and bring in 800,000 more people. I mean, that's going to affect everybody's quality of life. More traffic, more air pollution, less investment in your communities because that money is going to go to build a sewer line out to Jean, it's going to affect everybody. And so, honestly, if you want to affect the desert tortoise and affect your own quality of life and the future of Las Vegas, call Senator Cortez Masto and tell her you don't want the Clark County Lands Bill.
I think a lot of people consider you to be a radical environmentalist. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. But if you have inspired others to kind of take the more hardcore version of environmentalism, what advice would you give them in this particular environment?
It's all about the love. It's got to come from love. For me, I love the desert, and that's what makes me get up in the morning and want to do this work every day. For some people, it's their families that motivate them, and their families having clean air to breathe and clean water to drink. For some people, it's their communities that motivate them, and how we need to be investing in communities rather than investing in sprawl. But ultimately, We don't do this work just because it sounds like fun. We do this work because we love something and we want to defend it. And I think, to me, that's the most important thing, is centering that emotion and centering that love in our work.
Patrick Donnelly, thank you so much for joining us today on CityCast Las Vegas.
It's been nice speaking with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, and hey, before you go, a quick note. I want to thank everyone for such an amazing response. We have sold out the live podcast taping event coming up at the Rita Deanan Abbey Art Museum this week. So, as a thank you gift, we are offering half-price tickets for future visits to the museum to our listeners. You can go to the Rita Deanan Abbey Art Museum website ticket page and use the code CityCastLV for a 50% discount through July 15th. And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, please go tell a friend. You can rate our show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky.